Hello YouTube, Mickey Paris here again, and today we'll be looking at a very interesting part of our MySQL PHP tutorial. In the last tutorial we looked at a brief introduction of what we're gonna be creating, okay, and we created our database in PHP So to take you back to PHP I'm going to go to my local host and I'm going to go to PHP If you don't understand what we're doing, please kindly watch the previous tutorial. Now we're able to create test3 database, and in the database we're able to create a student with a structure, field names, first name, last name, etc. So what this table or this database is centered on is on student, and we are going to be fetching the information in this database. Currently there is nothing, or there are no information in this database. The fields or the database is empty. But one thing you should know is before you can get access into your database from PHP, you need to connect using strings and function that will enable you access this database that I'm accessing directly from here. But if I'm to go for my code, I need to find a way to access it. So what we're going to do, I've created this already in the previous tutorial. In this case, now we're going to be learning how to connect to the database. That will be the focal point of this tutorial. So what you're going to do is get straight with me. You're going to need to arrange your XAMPP folder. In my XAMPP folder, so it's a good practice to always store your connection strings outside your htdocs. For those that don't know, htdocs is the folder that leads you to the outside world. So anything here perhaps could be accessed from the internet, from the cyberspace. But for your connection strings, it's advisable to put it outside your okay guys, so it's advisable that you put your connection outside your htdocs. So I've created a folder and I've called it htconfig. So in this htconfig, I'm going to create a file and I'm going to call it MySQL li-connect.php. So let's do that together. I'm going to right click on this folder and I'm going to click on create a new file. So we're going to call the file MySQL_connect.php. You can call it anything. So this is what I decide to call mine. I'm going to save it in this same htconfig folder.php and I'm going to click on save. Now I clean this. I just use this to save the file. Now if you look up now, you can see this file has been saved. Now having my file saved, I'm sure you by now you understand the PHP tag, how to open and close the PHP tag, because every other code you'll be putting inside this file is dependent on the PHP tag that you open and close. If I just put anything here and I save it, it will show on the browser. There's no doubt about that. But when you want to specifically position some things on the screen, you need syntax. You need to put, that is when your code comes in. So I'm not going to be doing this. Okay. So what we're going to do is I want to connect to my SQL database. This is the database once again. I have created a database called test3. I have created a table called students. So in this case, we are not picking the table. All we need is to get access to this place. So how can you get access to MySQL database? You need the username. And for me to get to this PHP admin, for those of us that saw me when I came here, it didn't ask me to log in. Why? Because by default, my PHP admin is not password protected, and I use a username called root to come in with no password, which is not safe. So in your case, please, you just protect it using a password. Okay, and to do that, you just need to come to user account, and you will notice that my root account here say password no, meaning I can connect using root to my local host, and I can decide to use this IP address that has been given to local host. Okay, so but I would I will try and put password later, but for this purpose there is no password. Take note of that. So you can decide to create another account and you give them some privileges. So you will notice I've created an account here called student web with accessing it through localhost, and there's a password for it. Okay, and for those that were not here when I created it, it's also turtle dove. So but for the sake of this tutorial, I can delete it. I can drop this user account, student web, and I'm gonna clean it off. I'm gonna delete it. Okay, are you sure you want to drop? Do you really want to execute the drop database? Let me see. Drop the database that have the same name as the user. Okay, there's no database that have the same name as the user. So I've deleted, because when you're creating a user, most times most people give it the same name as the database. So in deleting that user, it's going to as well delete the database, in there. So I'm going to create it again just for you to know what we're doing. So the username is going to be what? We're going to call it student web. Okay, I decided to call it student web. So I'm going to make it connect using local host. Okay, and the password, I'm going to call it turtle dove. Okay, you type it again, turtle dove. Understood? Then you click on, very important, you need to grant privileges to this user, otherwise he won't have access to do select or do some queries on this table in the database. So as this, most times it's not advisable to grant all privileges to a user that is not root. Root is the privileged user, is the super user, and he can do anything on the server. But any user you are creating that you just want to be able to perform queries, so you can specifically remove some privileges that you don't want this person to have. Okay, but to save time and not explain all the nuances here, I'm gonna leave it as select all. Just check everything for the sake of this tutorial, and I click on go. So this user now access to this database test3 with the student table in there. So now that we've satisfied that, so take note of what we've just done now. We've created a table, a student table, students, username, root, password, turtle dove, and final thing is the host. Don't forget our host here is what? Local host. Okay, so having done this, let's go back to our code, the PHP connect string. We want to be able to use this code here, see if we can access the database. So first thing first, you need to open your PHP syntax, your PHP tag. Having that here, you need to declare your variables. Okay, though it's not compulsory, the function you need to connect to the database is simply MySQL _connect, and it's going to need some parameters. Are you with me now? These are inbuilt functions that has been created. So don't forget, this is procedural PHP. So everything is procedural here. So these functions have been built. All you need to do is to know how to use them. So in MySQL Connect, it needs 4 parameters. It needs the username, it needs the password, okay, it needs the host, and it needs the, okay, so let's get it straight here. So we need like we said earlier, username. Okay, going straight to the point, I'm assuming that you already know how to declare variables in PHP. Okay, so I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it username. And to declare a variable, you prefix with the $sign and in quotes the string that this variable is going to hold. So username, like we said, is going to be root, and after a variable you always terminate it with a semicolon. Okay, then the password, like we said, we gave this a password of AutoDove. Okay, terminate it. We also need the DB name, that's database name, and the database name we created was test3. Created anything, test3, and the host's name we used was localhost. Remember, even if you look at my screen here, when I created the user student, look at the SQL's code that created that. Create user student web at localhost, identified via this password is not showing you. So that's that. So going back to the code, we are going to use localhost as our code. So these are the 4 parameters that this function will accept. Okay, so this is one way you can connect. I'm going to show you the second way right now. So what you need to do here is just passing the variable to this function. Okay, so let's start with username. Oh, sorry, you put your comma, you put your password, comma. Okay, I think, let's see, I think host name has to come before username. I'm not mixing it up. Then I have the database name in variable. Okay, so with this is what you need. Are you with me now? MySQL this. But to make your code more readable, it's very good or advisable you pass this function to a variable too. So I'm going to call this connect, db connected. I'm going to call this db connected equal to, I hope you understand what I'm doing here. So whatever you see prefix with the $sign equals to, you are declaring a variable and you are assigning a value to the variable. So these variables are assigned. So if I ask you now, what is the content of this variable, what is inside this variable? It's just like a container. So you can tell me, oh, there is a string called root here, anytime, any day, except I come back and change it. then username would no longer have a content of root, rather whatever new string has been passed. So meaning this variable has been assigned this connection string. So for us to know that all this information that has been passed to this function, meaning you've passed host name, local host, so MySQL will check is actually local. MySQL will also check if username is, there's a username called root in the system, and there's a password called turtledove, and there's a database called test3. If that is set, then you can come down and use a function to say, okay, if I'm using my tab to complete the autocomplete, so I'm going to say if db connected, that is if everything given to this function, if anything given to this function is correct, that's what this means. That is, if this is true, what you're asking is if this is true. Don't forget, if anything here is wrong, then this is not true. This thing is not true because it encountered error. This function is not true. But if this function is true and everything is okay here, then that's what you are telling this. You are saying if this database connected variable is true, then what should happen? Then you can say, okay, let me know so I can be sure that everything went well. So show me something on the screen. So I'm going to say, okay, echo. There's a function called echo, and okay, or there's a key echo, and you're going to say, okay, connection successful. Okay, don't forget, you always quote, you always terminate your function or your variable with a semicolon. Now I'm going to save this. Don't forget, you know your if construct. This is the if function, and you also have an else. That is, if something goes wrong, what should happen? Then I can say, okay, echo connection failed. Okay, and I can decide to pass it with a function that is called MySQL underscore connect underscore error. The function too. Are you with me now? So with this now, we can go ahead and check the MySQL connect and see if our code is really working. So how do we go there? We need to access our XAMPP folder from the browser. Don't forget, we're going to be using this folder for our project. But don't forget, I said we're not going to be keeping our connection inside this. So meaning we need to access the connections file separately just for us to test. But we can do that in different ways. Either I go back to this folder, htconfig, and I locate my MySQL connect.php. Let's see if we can do that. Okay. So what I need to do is to, don't forget, this is outside htdocs. This is outside htdocs. Okay. It's gonna be a long journey for me to do, going back to htdocs and doing this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to my project folder, and you say we're going to be using, it's inside htdocs, and it's going to be using test3. So in this test3 now, let's create a file and name this index.php. I'm going to change the name later, just for us to be sure that we are good to go to start our project. So index.php. So this is saved inside test3. Are you with me now? So why this test3 won't show you anything? I'm sure you know this. Once a folder is accessed from htdocs, the first thing that runs or that gets passed, or the first file that gets passed to the browser, is any index file that the system finds. Any file that you name index, but it starts with index.php. That's the first point of contact. If it doesn't see index.php, then it's going to locate index.html. So, but if there's nothing indexed in that case, then you will have to manually route to whatever file that you have here. Are you with me now? Currently in the testary, there is no file in this folder. I have just created index. Are you with me now? So let's check if index will appear here now. You notice it took off that parent folder, meaning I don't need to know whether there's any other thing in that folder, but as long as I can identify a file called index, I will not show you any other file that I have in there. Are you with me now? Let me make that clear to you. Let me rename this index to index2 and see that our parent directory comes back now. So I save it and I refresh this page. You notice now it's showing me, listing out all the files or folder that it finds inside this parent directory. And what's the parent directory? Is the index of testary. So this is the parent. Any other thing that comes under testary becomes the children. But as long as it doesn't, the system will not find any index.php, not index with anything, strict index. The system would list out everything here. But if it can find index, it's going to ignore every other file and hide the rest and show you the content of index.php. Are you with me now? So let me change this back to index. Okay, and in this case now I'm saving it. You know, I'm using my shortcut, or you can use a save here. Now you come back to refresh. Now nothing is in index because index is empty. Index.php is empty. Are you with me now? Index.php is empty. For you to know it's not empty, let's just put something there. Welcome. And let's refresh the page. Can we see it? Welcome. But that's not what we want to do. We want to check if our connection that we kept outside the htdocs folder MySQL is actually okay, which is this here. So in this case now we're going to open the PHP tag here and we're going to close it. Now in this tag we're going to use a function, a built-in function in PHP we want to include. One good thing about PHP and some function is it allows you to reuse something. I can decide to use all this information without typing it directly in this file, and I bring it in here using a function. So it's a security level. I've hidden this outside my htdocs, outside it, but I'm still indirectly displaying or putting this, more or less like me copying all these things like this and putting it here. But to achieve this same thing without messing up our code and, you know, making things difficult, Control Z, we're going to use a function to include this thing inside here. So you can use a different function. You can use the include PHP. I'm not going to take time to be explaining this. You can also use the include _once. You can use require, and you can use require _once. Are you with me now? So I'm gonna comment that out so that you know what we're doing. So we're going to, in this case now, require once, and the path where your connection is. So what's the path? The path, don't forget, before we get to htdocs, we are going to get inside all these folders in our base directory, which is XAMPP here. So coming down, you're going to htdocs, htconfig as a folder before you open htdocs. So meaning I have to go back. Currently, look at this, the name of this file. I'm in htdocs/test. So meaning I have to go back one level to htdocs. Are you with me now? I have to go back one. Now this file is inside htdocs, meaning I have to go back one level to XAMPP. Look at that white displayed on the screen here. Look at when I hover my mouse here. Can you see the path? C column /XAMPP/htdocs/test. So what I want to do now, what you see me do now, is to use a dot to go back. You can see a dot. With this dot now, I have left my current folder now, which is htdocs, where this test theory is located, and I've returned to XAMPP folder. In this XAMPP now, I can now pick. Are you with me now? In this XAMPP folder now, I can now pick my htconfig, and I can now pick my MYSQL I_connect.php. So what this is saying is the current folder where you are, which is test theory. Don't forget, test theory is a folder inside htdocs. Oh, meaning I need to go out twice. So I'm going to put another dot. You know what this means? You are currently in test theory folder. This file called index is inside test theory folder, which is this. Test theory is a folder, and index is inside test theory. Test theory is inside htdocs. So first of all, test theory index, go out of test theory. When you are out of test theory, that means you are now inside htdocs. Now you are inside htdocs. Go back one more time so that you can go out of this htdocs folder and access any folder that is inside the root directory XAMPP. So now that I've gone out twice, I can now pick any of the folder that is inside my base directory XAMPP. I can decide to pick this. But what I want to pick is the htconfig, which I have put here. Then the file inside htconfig, which is MYSQL_connect.php. So once I save it, and let's see if there's going to be any error on the screen. I'm going to refresh my browser. Can you see now? There is an error on the screen because I asked this to pass in my MySQL code here. I said the system should tell me the error where the issue is. Okay, and I can see, let's check it out together. It said MySQL_connect access denied for root. Oh my god. Oh, I'm sure you can see the problem now. I'm using a username that is not assigned with a password. Remember when I was creating the username, what did I say the username was? Remember? Let's go back to our PHP MyAdmin. Which user did I create now? Student web, you see? And I was using root. So you would always see these little mistakes. So I'm going to go back and change this. This is not root, this is student web. Are you with me now? So meaning, you see now, all I need to do is just come to change the file in my connection file, okay, or folder. I don't need to touch anything. So I don't need to touch anything yet. Okay, so what I need to do is, even if I have used this string in different files, you can see the advantage of streamlining the work you are going to be doing if all these codes were to be in different files. Let's say 100 files, meaning you go to 100 files, change this from student root to student web, go to the next one, change it from root to student web, because one little error would spread. But in this case now I have it in just one single file, which I've used a function require once to pass it to anywhere I want to use it. So in this case now I just come to a single file and change it. So So now I've changed it to the correct thing now, so it affects my index. So let's go back to index and refresh. Oh my God, we have successfully connected to the database because we have given the right connection. Okay, so I'm going to end this here so it won't get longer. When we continue, I'm going to show you the second way in which we can do the same thing using another method that is similar to this. You won't get confused, okay? I promise you. Okay guys, see you in the next tutorial.